The galactic research outpost orbiting Alaris sparkled like a crystalline spiderweb against the dual purple cyan suns that bathed the planet below. Aaron Hollis gazed through the viewport, mesmerized by the alien world's surface, a tapestry of luminescent coral structures and sprawling biological networks that pulsed, with life even visible from orbit. Genetic anomaly detected in the living spire. Containment failure imminent. All scientific personnel report to emergency briefing in 15 minutes. The announcement jolted Aaron from his contemplation. His communication device buzzed with priority clearance codes he hadn't seen since his days at the Intergalactic Biological Institute. Whatever was happening on Alaris, it was serious enough to summon an Earth geneticist across 3 star systems. Roxy, compile all available data on the Living Spire ecosystem. Aaron commanded his AI assistant. Already on it, boss. Roxy's digitized voice replied with characteristic sass. Though I should warn you, Alaris biological systems make Earth's gene complexity look like a preschool puzzle. You might be in over your head this time. Aaron smiled despite the gravity of the situation. Just get me the data, and throw in anything we have on their biocast system. One xenobiological crash course coming right up, Roxy chirped. But you might want to prepare for a cultural shock. Alaris isn't just another research post. These people take their biology very, very seriously. Aaron had no idea just how prophetic those words would prove to be. The emergency briefing room hummed with tension. Representatives from various species stood around a holographic display of what appeared to be a massive crystalline structure. The living spire, Aaron assumed, now laced with pulsing red veins of infection. Commander Mavis, a tall humanoid with skin reminiscent of polished amber, addressed the room. The mutation rate has accelerated beyond our containment capabilities. The living spire's core systems are failing. Without intervention, the entire ecosystem of Alaris will collapse within 14 days. Murmurs rippled through the assembled researchers. The spire isn't just a biological curiosity, Mavis continued. It's the central nervous system of the entire planet. Every organism, every ecosystem is connected to it. If it falls, everything falls. A stern-faced Illyrian with elaborate coral-like growths adorning her shoulders stepped forward. Her voice carried the weight of authority. I am Chieftain Valara of the Coral Armor Council. My people have maintained the spire for 10,000 years. This infection is unlike anything in our records. Her gaze swept the room before settling on Aaron, with unmistakable distrust. The Galactic Collective insists we need outside help. They claim this Earth geneticist has expertise with cross-species viral mutations. Aaron straightened. I've developed techniques for gene splicing that might help neutralize the viral threat. But I'll need full access to your biological archives and the spire itself. Valara's posture stiffened. Outsiders have never been granted direct access to the sacred spire. Commander Mavis intervened smoothly. Chieftain Valara, the Galactic Covenant is clear on emergencies of planetary scale. Article 47 permits intervention when extinction-level events are imminent. The Covenant also requires protective protocols, Valara countered. The biocast will provide guards to ensure no contamination occurs. Fine, Aaron agreed, already calculating gene sequencing probabilities in his mind. When can I begin? Immediately, Commander Mavis said. And Aaron, success here isn't optional. The consequences of failure extend beyond Alaris. As the meeting disbanded, Aaron found himself approached by 2 Illyrians. Unlike Valara's coral-adorned appearance, these 2 bore sleek, almost metallic ridges along their temples and forearms. Their skin had a faint blue luminescence, and their eyes, large, with irises that shifted between silver and violet, watched him with undisguised curiosity. I am Zira, said the taller one, her posture suggesting military discipline. A bioluminescent blade was sheathed at her hip, humming with energy. This is Leora. We are biocast. We will accompany you to the spire. Leora, slighter in build, but with an intensity in her gaze that suggested deep intelligence, inclined her head. We have been assigned as your protectors and guides. The spire's labyrinth is not safe for the uninitiated. I appreciate the help, Aaron replied, though he couldn't help but notice the ceremonial way they addressed him. I'm just a geneticist, not some kind of dignitary. You are the one who will attempt to heal the spire, Leora said simply. That makes you more significant than you realize. Aaron had no response to that. As they led him toward the shuttle bay, he caught a fragment of conversation between the two Alarians. The council won't be pleased, Zira murmured. An outsider touching the spire. If the outsider saves the spire, the ancient laws are clear, Leora answered, her voice carrying a note of unease. The covenant of service will bind us. What does that mean? Aaron asked, stopping in his tracks. The two biocast warriors exchanged a glance, but offered no explanation. We should hurry, Zira said instead. The spire's deterioration accelerates with each passing hour. As their shuttle plunged through Alaris's atmosphere, Aaron stared out at the alien landscape unfolding below. Vast forests of luminescent fungi, sprawling coral-like structures that house the planet's cities. And, at the center, rising like a crystalline mountain from the landscape, the living spire. What Aaron couldn't know was that his mission to save this biological marvel would entangle him in ancient laws, interstellar politics, and a bond with his Illyrian guides that would transcend both duty and species. The descent through Alaris's atmosphere bathed the shuttle in iridescent light. The planet's unique atmospheric composition refracted sunlight from the twin suns into a spectrum that danced across the craft's viewport. Aaron watched, transfixed, as they passed through cloud formations that resembled massive jellyfish, pulsing with internal electrical activity. Bioluminescent weather systems, Leora explained, noticing his fascination. They absorb excess solar radiation to protect surface life. Your entire planet seems alive, Aaron remarked, his scientific curiosity temporarily overwhelming his concern about the mission. It is, Zira stated matter-of-factly. The spire connects all living systems. Nothing exists in isolation here. The shuttle banked sharply, following the contours of a massive coral structure that stretched for kilometers, embedded within its surfaces. Aaron could see habitation pods, transport systems, and what appeared to be agricultural sections, an entire city integrated seamlessly with the living coral. Coral Spire City, Leora provided, the primary urban center and seat of the Coral Armor Council. As they approached a landing platform extending from the city's upper level, Aaron noticed armed guards lining the perimeter. Their armor resembled fossilized coral, and they carried weapons that seemed to pulse with organic energy. Your welcome committee doesn't look particularly welcoming, he observed. Chieftain Valara has ordered full security protocols. Zira's expression remained neutral, but Aaron detected a hint of disapproval in her tone. The Coral Armor Caste is traditional in their outlook. Once landed, Aaron gathered his equipment, portable gene sequencers, viral containment units, and the specialized interface technology he'd developed for cross-species genetic manipulation. When he stepped onto Illyrian soil for the first time, the gravity felt slightly lighter than Earth's, giving his movements an unexpected buoyancy. Watch your step, Leora cautioned. Your body will adjust to our gravity within hours. But until then, movements may be unpredictable. The escort of guards led them through corridors of living coral that shifted subtly as they passed, as though the very walls were breathing. Bioluminescent organisms provided soft, ambient lighting that changed in intensity according to the time of day. The Coral Armor Council awaits, announced one of the guards, gesturing toward an imposing doorway ahead. Aaron stepped into a vast chamber whose ceiling opened to the sky. The council members, 12 Illyrians with elaborate coral growths signifying their rank, sat in a semicircle on raised platforms. At their center, Chieftain Valara regarded Aaron with undisguised skepticism. "Earth geneticist," she addressed him without preamble. "Understand that you are here by necessity, not choice. The Spire's infection threatens all Illyrian life. You will be granted limited access to our biological archives and escorted to the infection site. Nothing more." "With respect, Chieftain," Aaron countered. "Limited access won't be sufficient. I need to understand the Spire's complete genetic structure, its relationship to other organisms, and the full history of previous mutations. Anything less reduces our chances of success." A murmur of disapproval rippled through the council. "You ask for secrets preserved for millennia," Valara said coldly. "I ask for what's necessary to save your planet," Aaron replied, meeting her gaze steadily. Commander Mavis, who had accompanied them from the outpost, stepped forward. "The Galactic Collective has vouched for geneticist Hollis. His work on cross-species viral containment is unparalleled. If anyone can develop a solution, it's him." After a tense silence, Valara nodded curtly. "Leora will oversee your access to the archives. Zyra will ensure your safety and the protection of our sacred sites. You have 7 days before the infection reaches critical mass." "I'll need a laboratory," Aaron said, "equipped for genetic manipulation and viral containment." "It is prepared," Leora confirmed. "Adjacent to the Spire's outer chamber." As they exited the council chamber, Aaron felt the weight of expectation settle upon him. 7 days to understand an alien ecosystem, identify a mutating pathogen, and develop a cure. The task seemed impossible. "They're not telling me everything," he muttered to his guides, once they were alone in a transport pod speeding toward the laboratory complex. Zyra and Leora exchanged another of their meaningful glances. "There are aspects of the Spire that are sacred," Leora explained carefully. "Knowledge protected by tradition and law." "I don't need religious dogma," Aaron said, frustration edging into his voice. "I need scientific data." "On Alaris," Leora replied softly. "They are often the same thing." The laboratory assigned to Aaron was a marvel of both biological and mechanical engineering. Equipment that would have been metallic on Earth was here grown from specialized organic compounds, creating interfaces that seemed almost alive. Crystalline data storage units pulsed with light as information flowed through them like blood through veins. "This is incredible," Aaron admitted, examining the gene sequencer that resembled a living organism more than a machine. "The Mindspire cast designed it," Leora explained, her expression softening with pride. "I'll show you how everything functions." Over the next few hours, Leora guided Aaron through the intricacies of Illyrian biotechnology, while Zyra maintained a vigilant watch at the laboratory entrance. The warrior's alertness never seemed to waver, though occasionally Aaron caught her watching him with an intensity that went beyond mere surveillance. As night fell, marked by a gradual shift in the bioluminescent lighting to a deeper blue, Aaron had begun to grasp the fundamentals of the Spire's biological structure. It was unlike anything he had encountered, a macroorganism composed of billions of specialized cells, with a neural network that extended throughout the planet. "It's sentient?" he asked Leora, who had remained by his side, explaining complex Illyrian biological concepts with remarkable patience. "Not as you understand consciousness," she replied. "It doesn't think in words or images. It feels the planet, responds to imbalances, guides evolution. And this virus is disrupting that guidance system." "Yes, the infection alters the Spire's neural pathways, causing cascading failures throughout the ecosystem." Aaron rubbed his eyes, fatigue setting in after hours of intense study. "I need to see it. The infection site." "Tomorrow," Zyra spoke for the first time in hours. "You require rest. Human physiology is not adapted to Illyrian day cycles." "I don't have time to rest," Aaron protested. But even as he spoke, A wave of exhaustion washed over him. 7 minutes in the Spire's presence without proper preparation would kill you, Zira stated bluntly. We will conduct the necessary protection rituals in the morning. Rituals? Aaron raised an eyebrow. Biological adjustments, Leora clarified. Your body needs temporary genetic modifications to withstand the Spire's energy. Aaron wanted to argue further, but the logic was sound. He wouldn't be any use to Alaris dead. Fine, where do I sleep? Quarters have been prepared adjacent to the laboratory, Leora answered. We will remain nearby. You don't have to guard me all night, Aaron said, gathering his notes. I'm not going anywhere. It is not a matter of trust, Zira replied. It is our duty. Something in her tone made Aaron look up. This covenant of service you mentioned earlier, what exactly does it mean? Again, that significant glance between the two Illyrians. It is not relevant until the Spire is healed, Leora said carefully. If the Spire is healed, Zira corrected. Humor me, Aaron persisted. Leora sighed. A surprisingly human gesture. The Galactic Covenant established in 2558 states that any being who saves a planet from extinction is granted the status of Covenant holder. Those indigenous beings who witness the salvation, particularly warriors present during the sacred ritual, are bound to serve the Savior for life, or until the planet's life flow is stabilized. Aaron stared at them, processing the implications. You're saying if I save your planet, you two would be… what? My servants? Service companions, Leora corrected. Guides, protectors, assistants. The bond transcends simple servitude. It is considered the highest honor in Illyrian culture. That's ridiculous, Aaron shook his head. I wouldn't hold anyone to that kind of archaic law. I'm just doing my job. The law is not yours to dismiss, Zira said, her voice tight. It is woven into the fabric of both galactic and Illyrian governance. It ensures that those with the knowledge to save worlds are properly honored and protected. We should not discuss this further, Leora interjected, casting a warning glance at Zira. The healing has not yet occurred, and our energy is better spent preparing for tomorrow's challenges. Aaron wanted to press the issue, but fatigue was rapidly overwhelming him. Whatever genetic accommodations his body needed to make to Alaris's environment were clearly taking their toll. We'll talk about this later, he conceded, following Leora's guidance to his quarters. As he drifted toward sleep on a bed that seemed to adjust its firmness to his body's needs. Aaron's last conscious thought was of the strange obligation he might unwittingly place on his Illyrian guides. The idea that saving their world would bind them to him felt like an unfair burden on all sides, a complication he hadn't anticipated when accepting this mission. But complications, he reflected as consciousness faded, were inevitable when worlds collided. And on Alaris, where biology, technology, and spirituality intertwined in ways his earth-trained mind was only beginning to comprehend. The collision was just beginning. Dawn on Alaris arrived as a gradual brightening of the dual suns, casting prismatic patterns across the coral architecture. Aaron awoke to find his quarters bathed in rainbow light, and his body surprisingly rejuvenated despite the short rest. Your system has adapted well to our atmosphere, Leora observed as she entered with what appeared to be breakfast, fruits that shifted color as they ripened, and a beverage that emitted a soft glow. The nutritional profile has been adjusted to support your altered metabolism, she explained, setting the tray beside him. You'll need the energy for the Spire ritual. Aaron sat up, noticing that his skin had taken on a faint, blue luminescence, similar to, but much fainter than, the natural glow of the Illyrians. Is this part of the adaptation? Yes, Leora nodded, her expression clinical and assessing. Your cellular structure has begun incorporating trace bioluminescent compounds. It's harmless and temporary, but necessary for the Spire to recognize you as non-threatening. Aaron examined his arms with scientific curiosity, rather than alarm. Fascinating. My body's actually accepting alien biological compounds? The supplements in your evening meal were designed to facilitate compatibility, Leora explained. Your species is remarkably adaptable at the genetic level. As Aaron consumed the alien breakfast, finding the taste reminiscent of citrus and honey, Zyra entered. Unlike the previous day, she was now dressed in ceremonial armor that accentuated her already impressive physique. Bioluminescent patterns flowed across its surface like living circuitry. The preparation chambers are ready, she announced. We must proceed with the protection ritual before approaching the spire. What exactly does this ritual involve? Aaron asked, setting aside the empty container. A specialized genetic infusion, Leora explained, already moving to prepare equipment from a case she'd brought with her. It will temporarily alter your cellular receptors to withstand the spire's neural emissions. And if I don't undergo this ritual? Neurological overload, Zyra stated flatly, followed by systemic organ failure. The spire's energy is not compatible with unmodified human physiology. Right, Aaron nodded. Ritual it is. The preparation chambers turned out to be a series of interconnected pools, filled with luminous liquid that reminded Aaron of concentrated algae cultures. Under Leora's guidance, he submerged himself fully clothed in the first pool, which immediately began to permeate his clothing and skin with a tingling sensation. The first bath cleanses external contaminants, Leora explained from the edge of the pool. The second initiates cellular receptor adaptation. The third stabilizes the process. And you do this every time you visit the spire? Aaron asked, moving to the second pool as instructed. Only the Biocast and Mindspire cast undergo the full ritual, Leora replied. Our genetic structure is specifically designed for spire interaction. Designed? Aaron caught the word choice. You mean evolved? Another of those meaningful glances between his guides. The Biocast lineage is cultivated, Leora said carefully. Each generation is genetically optimized for their role. You're genetically engineered? Aaron couldn't keep the surprise from his voice. We prefer harmonized with the spire's intent, Leora corrected gently. The distinction is important to our culture. As Aaron completed the third immersion, he found his senses heightened. Colors appeared more vivid, sounds more distinct. He could even perceive the subtle neural emissions Leora had mentioned, a faint buzzing at the edge of his awareness. The adaptation is taking hold, Zyra observed, her tone suggesting approval. You respond well to the process. I feel different, Aaron admitted, as they led him toward a transport platform. More connected somehow. That is the purpose, Leora nodded. You are now partially attuned to the spire's biological frequency. It will recognize you as a potential healer rather than a threat. The transport platform, another marvel of Illyrian bioengineering, resembled a large leaf that responded to their weight by folding its edges upward. Once they were securely aboard, it detached from its stem and glided silently through a network of tubular passages that reminded Aaron of massive plant vasculature. As they traveled deeper into the living city, Aaron observed the daily life of Illyrians. The three distinct castes were immediately identifiable. The coral-adorned armor caste, the luminescent biocaste, like his companions, and members of the Mindspire caste with their distinctive cranial formations that resembled crystalline crowns. Your society is completely structured around biological specialization, Aaron observed. Is there no movement between castes? There is purpose in specialization, Zyra replied. Each caste serves the whole. But the spire serves all, Leora added, her tone suggesting this was a common cultural refrain. The transport eventually delivered them to an imposing structure that pulsed with energy. Unlike the coral architecture of the city, this building appeared composed of crystalline materials that refracted light in complex patterns. The spire's outer chamber, Leora announced as they disembarked. Beyond lies the pathway to the central spire core. Guards from both the coral armor and biocast stood at attention, their weapons trained on the entrance. They parted reluctantly as Zira presented a crystalline identification marker, allowing the trio to pass. Inside, the air hummed with energy that Aaron could now perceive as a tangible force. The walls pulsed with what appeared to be data flows, streams of light carrying information throughout the structure. "The spire processes planetary data here," Leora explained, leading him toward a central laboratory area. Climate patterns, species interactions, evolutionary trajectories, all monitored and subtly guided. "And now corrupted by the infection," Zyra added grimly, gesturing toward a holographic display showing the spire's internal structure. Angry red tendrils spread through the otherwise blue projection, centered on the spire's core. "It's worse than we thought," Leora said, her voice tight with concern. "The infection has accelerated. We now have less than 5 days before irreversible damage occurs." Aaron approached the display, studying the pattern of viral spread. "I need to see tissue samples from the infected areas, and I need access to the spire's genetic archives, all of them." "I've prepared the samples." Leora moved to a nearby workstation where crystalline containers held specimens glowing with the same angry red as the infection display. "The archives, however," she hesitated, "require Valara's highest clearance," Zira finished, "which she has not granted." Aaron felt a surge of frustration. "We don't have time for political games. Without understanding the spire's complete genetic structure, I'm working blind." "There may be a way," Leora said carefully, glancing at Zira. "The biocast maintains separate archives, not as extensive as the Council's, but more practical in nature. Accessing those archives without Council approval would be a violation of protocol," Zira warned. Though Aaron noticed her objection seemed perfunctory. "Would these archives give me what I need?" Aaron asked Leora directly. "They would provide a foundation," she confirmed, "particularly regarding the spire's neural pathways and immune responses." Aaron looked between the two biocast warriors, aware that he was asking them to defy their leadership. "I can't force either of you to risk your positions, but without those archives, I can't guarantee a solution in time." After a moment of tense silence, Zira straightened her posture. "The preservation of the spire supersedes protocol. If the Council cannot see that, then we must act independently." "I'll retrieve the archive access codes," Leora said, her decision apparently made. "It will take approximately 1 hour. In the meantime," Zira continued, "I will escort you to the observation platform. You should see the infection firsthand to understand what we face." As Leora departed on her unauthorized mission, Zyra led Aaron through a series of progressively smaller chambers, each requiring biometric confirmation of their identities. The security measures underscored the sacred status of their destination. "Few outsiders have ever been permitted this close to the spire's core," Zira informed him as they reached the final security checkpoint. "You must prepare yourself. The sight can be overwhelming to the uninitiated." "I've studied some of the most complex biological systems in the galaxy," Aaron assured her. "I doubt anything could—" His words died in his throat as the final door spiraled open, revealing a vast chamber dominated by a massive crystalline structure that rose from floor to ceiling and beyond. The spire pulsed with life, its surface rippling with patterns of light that Aaron somehow knew represented data flows, evolutionary calculations, climate adjustments, the living computation of an entire planet's biological systems. But marring this magnificent display were patches of angry red, the infection, spreading like cracks in a perfect gemstone. Where the infection touched, the harmonious light patterns distorted into chaotic, discordant flashes. "By all the laws of physics," Aaron breathed, momentarily forgetting his scientific detachment. "It's conscious." "Not as you understand consciousness," Zira corrected, echoing Leora's earlier explanation. "But yes, it is aware. It feels, and now it suffers. As if in response to her words, a pulse of energy emanated from the spire, washing over them. Aaron gasped as information flooded his senses, not as words or images, but as pure emotional content. Pain, confusion, desperate struggle against the invading pathogen. It knows we're here, he realized. It's trying to communicate. Yes, Zyra confirmed, her usually stoic expression softening. The spire recognizes those who wish to heal it. It hopes. The raw emotion in her voice made Aaron look at her with new understanding. This wasn't just a mission for her. It was deeply personal. The spire wasn't merely a biological system to be maintained. It was the heart of her world, her culture, perhaps even her religion. "I'll do everything I can," he promised, surprising himself with the conviction in his voice. "Whatever it takes." Zyra met his gaze, her silver-violet eyes searching his. "Even if it means binding yourself to our laws, to our world?" The question hung between them, laden with implications Aaron couldn't fully comprehend. But before he could formulate a response, his communication device buzzed. "We have a problem." Leora's voice came through, tense with urgency. "The Council has detected unauthorized access attempts to the archives. Security forces have been dispatched to the laboratory. And there's something else. Long-range sensors have detected an approaching threat. The Cessid swarm has entered the system." "Cessid?" Aaron questioned, already following Zyra as she rushed back toward the exit. "A parasitic collective," she explained grimly as they moved. "They seek out vulnerable biological systems to consume and adapt. The Spire's distress signals must have attracted them." "How much time do we have?" 72 hours before they reach orbital range. But our immediate concern is reaching Leora before the Council's forces do." As they raced through the complex, Aaron realized the situation had just become exponentially more complicated. Not only was he fighting against a mysterious pathogen and obstructive local politics, but now an external threat loomed as well. And somewhere in the back of his mind, Zyra's unanswered question lingered. How far was he willing to go to save a world that wasn't his own? Aaron and Zyra reached the laboratory to find Leora frantically downloading data from the Biocast archives to portable crystal storage units. "The security forces are 3 levels up and descending," she reported, without looking up from her work. "We have approximately 4 minutes before they arrive." "Is that enough time?" Aaron asked, already moving to examine the data streams flowing across the holographic display. "It will have to be," Leora replied, her fingers dancing across the interface with practiced precision. "I'm prioritizing the neural pathway mappings and immune response protocols." Zyra took up position by the entrance, her luminescent blade now drawn and humming with energy. "I'll hold them off if necessary, but direct confrontation with the Coral Armor Guards would complicate our situation significantly." "There," Leora announced, disconnecting the crystal storage unit with a satisfied gesture. "The essential archives are secured. We should—" A proximity alarm cut her off. The laboratory's entrance sealed automatically as security protocols activated. "Too late for a clean exit," Zyra muttered, shifting to a defensive stance. "Is there another way out?" Aaron asked, quickly gathering his equipment and the precious data crystals. Leora moved to a section of wall that appeared identical to the surrounding surface. With a series of precise touches, the seemingly solid wall revealed itself to be a concealed doorway. "The Biocast maintains emergency passages throughout the complex. This will lead us to the secondary research facility." "The Council doesn't know about these passages?" Aaron asked, as they slipped through the opening, which sealed seamlessly behind them. "The Coral Armor Cast believes they control all access to the Spire," Zyra explained, her tone suggesting this was a deliberate misapprehension. "The Biocast has found it prudent to maintain certain independent systems. The passage they traversed was narrow and illuminated by the same bioluminescent organisms that lit the rest of the complex. Though dimmer here, Aaron had to duck occasionally to avoid crystalline formations that protruded from the ceiling. "Political division among the castes?" he inquired, recognizing signs of long-standing power struggles. "The Coral Armor Council governs," Leora explained as they hurried along. "But the Biocaste protects the Spire directly. There are philosophical differences about how best to serve Alaris. Differences that might now save the planet," Zyra added. "If the Council had its way, you would be limited to treating symptoms while the core infection spread unchecked." They emerged into a smaller, but well-equipped laboratory space, clearly designed for Biocaste use. Unlike the main facility with its ornate design elements, this lab was purely functional, a space for practical research rather than ceremonial science. "We can work here undetected for 12 hours at most," Leora said, immediately beginning to set up equipment. "After that, the Council's biosensors will likely detect our presence. Then we have 12 hours to make significant progress," Aaron replied, already connecting his Earth-designed equipment to the Illyrian systems. "Roxy, initialize genomic comparison protocols. Interfacing with alien tech again? You do like to keep things interesting," his AI assistant quipped, as it established connections with the crystal data storage. "Initial analysis suggests the pathogen has an unusual replication mechanism. It's not just attacking the Spire systems, it's rewriting them." "Show me the mutation patterns," Aaron requested, and holographic displays bloomed around him, detailing the virus's genetic structure. For the next several hours, Aaron worked in intense concentration, occasionally conferring with Leora about Illyrian biological principles that had no Earth equivalent. Zyra maintained vigilance, dividing her attention between security monitors and their work, occasionally offering insights from a warrior's perspective about the Spire's defensive capabilities. As Hour 10 approached, Aaron finally leaned back from the displays, rubbing his eyes. "I think I've identified the key vector," he announced. "The virus isn't actually Illyrian in origin. It shows hallmarks of genetic engineering, specifically designed to target the Spire's neural pathways." "Engineered?" Leora's expression shifted to one of alarm. "You suggest deliberate sabotage?" "The evidence points that way," Aaron confirmed grimly. "And there's more. The viral structure contains genetic markers similar to the approaching Cessid swarm." "That's impossible," Zyra interjected. "The Cessid haven't penetrated this sector before." "They wouldn't need to," Aaron explained. "Just a small sample of their genetic material, introduced to the Spire through a carrier." "A traitor among our people?" Leora's voice was barely above a whisper, the concept clearly disturbing to her. "Or an unwitting carrier," Aaron suggested. "Someone who traveled beyond your system and returned, not knowing they'd been infected." The implications hung heavy in the air between them. Before they could discuss further, Roxy's voice interrupted. "Incoming communication from Commander Mavis, Priority Alpha. And you might want to brace yourselves. She doesn't sound happy about your little unauthorized field trip." The commander's face appeared on the main display, her expression grim. "Dr. Hollis, I've just spent an hour convincing the Coral Armor Council not to have you and your Biocaste escorts arrested for treason. Please tell me you've made progress worth this diplomatic nightmare." Aaron quickly outlined his findings, watching the commander's expression shift from anger to grave concern. "This confirms our worst fears," she said when he'd finished. "The Cessid swarm isn't simply attracted to the Spire's distress signals. They created them. This is a coordinated attack." "But why?" Leora asked. "The Cessid have never shown interest in Alaris before." "The Spire's genetic library," Mavis replied. "It contains evolutionary data spanning millions of years. A treasure trove for a parasitic species that evolves by absorbing genetic material from other life forms." "We need to develop a countermeasure immediately," Aaron insisted. "Something that can both neutralize the virus and defend against the swarm when they arrive." The Council has agreed to grant you full access to all genetic archives, Mavis informed them. Chieftain Valara is displeased, but recognizes the severity of the threat. Report to the Central Spire chamber in 1 hour. And Aaron, she added, her tone softening slightly. Be prepared for the ritual. The Council insists that proper protocols be followed if you're to interface directly with the Spire's core. After the communication ended, Aaron turned to his companions. What ritual is she talking about? The communion of intent, Leora explained, already gathering their research materials. To access the Central Spire core, you must establish a direct neural connection. The ritual prepares both you and the Spire for this interface. A neural connection, Aaron repeated, alarm rising. You mean my consciousness will link with the Spire's? Not your full consciousness, Leora assured him. Only your intent and purpose will be shared. But it is intimate, and not without risk. What kind of risk? Rejection, Zira stated bluntly. If the Spire perceives your intent as harmful, it will defend itself. And what happens then? Neural feedback, Leora said quietly. Fatal in most cases. Aaron swallowed hard. I don't suppose there's an alternative approach? Both Illyrians shook their heads. The Spire must accept you, Zira said, or any attempt to alter its systems will fail. And if it does accept me, what then? Leora and Zira exchanged another of their meaningful glances. Then, Leora replied carefully, you become bound to the Spire, and the covenant of service is activated. The one that would bind you two to me, Aaron clarified, finally understanding the significance of their earlier reluctance to discuss the matter. So, that's the real reason for all this ceremony. It's not just about healing the Spire. It's about establishing a formal relationship under galactic law. The law exists for a reason, Zira said, her expression unreadable. Those who hold the power to save worlds must be honored and protected. The bond ensures this. And if I refuse to participate in this ritual, Aaron challenged, then the Spire dies, Leora answered simply, along with our world. The weight of responsibility settled on Aaron's shoulders like a physical burden. He'd come to save a planet's ecosystem, not to become entangled in ancient laws and lifelong bonds. Yet the urgency of the situation left little room for philosophical debate. Let's focus on saving the Spire first, he decided. We'll worry about galactic law afterward. As they prepared to depart for the Central Spire chamber, Aaron couldn't help but notice a subtle change in his companion's demeanor, a mix of relief and apprehension that suggested this mission had always been about more than just science. For Zira and Leora, the stakes weren't just planetary survival. They were deeply personal. And Aaron was beginning to suspect that his own life was about to become irrevocably intertwined with theirs, whether he wanted it or not. The Central Spire chamber dwarfed the observation platform Aaron had visited earlier. Here, the living crystal of the Spire dominated everything, rising hundreds of meters overhead and descending deep into the planet's core. The chamber itself was arranged in concentric circles around the Spire, with workstations, ritual spaces, and defensive positions all oriented toward the pulsing heart of Alaris. Members of all three castes were present. Coral armor guards maintaining security, Mind Spire technicians monitoring data flows, and biocast warriors positioned at key junctures where the infection's red tendrils were most visible. Chieftain Valara awaited them, along with Commander Mavis, and an assembly of what appeared to be high-ranking officials from both Alaris and the Galactic Collective. The situation has deteriorated, Valara announced without preamble. The Cessid swarm has accelerated its approach. We now have less than 50 hours before they enter our atmosphere. And the Spire's condition? Aaron asked, already scanning the diagnostic displays. Critical, responded an elderly Illyrian with the distinctive cranial formations of the Mind Spire caste. Neural pathway degradation has reached 37%. At 40%, cascading failure becomes inevitable. Then we need to begin immediately, Aaron stated, turning to Leora. "How quickly can we prepare for the ritual?" "The preparations are already underway," she replied, gesturing toward an alcove where specialized equipment was being assembled. "But first, you must understand what you're undertaking." The elderly Mindspire member approached, introducing himself as Elder Thaxus. "The communion of intent is not merely symbolic, Dr. Hollis. It establishes a symbiotic relationship between you and the living spire. Your genetic code will be temporarily incorporated into its neural matrix, allowing you to implement changes from within." "And the risks?" Aaron pressed. "If the spire rejects you, the neural feedback could cause permanent brain damage or death." Thaxus confirmed. "If it accepts you, you will be forever marked by its energy, recognizable to all Illyrians as one who has joined with the heart of our world." "And this activates your covenant of service?" Aaron asked, glancing at Zira and Leora. "It does," Valara interjected, her tone making it clear she disapproved of this outcome. "The warriors who stand witness to the healing become bound by galactic law to serve the healer. It is traditional." "I've already told them I won't hold them to that," Aaron stated firmly. "Your personal feelings are irrelevant," Valara replied coldly. "The covenant is binding under interstellar law. To reject it would dishonor both them and our entire culture." Before Aaron could argue further, Leora gently guided him toward the preparation area. "We must focus on the task at hand," she murmured. "The spire cannot wait while we debate tradition." The next hour passed in a blur of increasingly complex preparations. Aaron was dressed in a specialized biosuit that would facilitate his connection to the spire while protecting his human physiology from the full force of its energy. Leora and Thaxus worked together to calibrate the neural interface, while Zira oversaw security arrangements that would ensure the ritual remained undisturbed. The Biocast warriors who witness the healing traditionally become the Covenant's enforcers, Thaxus explained as they worked. Zira and Leora were specifically chosen for their exceptional abilities and knowledge of off-world cultures. "So this was all planned from the beginning?" Aaron asked, unable to keep a note of accusation from his voice. "The need for healing was genuine," Thaxus assured him. "But yes, the Council anticipated the potential activation of the Covenant. It has been many generations since an outsider was granted such honor." "Some honor," Aaron muttered, "binding intelligent beings to servitude." "You misunderstand the nature of the bond," Thaxus said, his ancient eyes studying Aaron with unexpected intensity. "The Covenant is not slavery. It is a sacred partnership, one that benefits both parties. Zira and Leora will gain knowledge and experience beyond Alaris, while you gain protectors and cultural ambassadors who are bound by honor, not chains." Before Aaron could respond, alarms blared throughout the chamber. Commander Mavis rushed to a monitoring station, her expression grim. "The swarm has accelerated again," she announced. "New estimate places them at our doorstep in 36 hours. And they've launched advanced scouts, biological probes designed to assess our defenses." "We must proceed immediately," Valara decided, all traces of her earlier resistance gone. "Dr. Hollis, are you prepared?" Aaron looked to Leora, who nodded confirmation that the technical preparations were complete. Then to Zira, whose intense gaze conveyed both warning and encouragement. "As ready as I'll ever be," he replied, stepping toward the interface platform, positioned before the infected section of the spire. The ritual began with a chanted invocation from the assembled Illyrians, a harmonic pattern that Aaron realized was designed to match the spire's natural frequency. As the chant continued, Leora activated the neural interface, and Aaron felt the first tentative connection form between his consciousness and the vast, alien awareness of the living spire. It was overwhelming. Information flooded his perception, not as data points or images, but as pure sensory impressions. He felt the health of forests thousands of kilometers distant, the migration patterns of airborne spores, the slow pulse of deep-sea organisms that had never seen sunlight. And through it all, the burning, discordant agony of the infection. Focus. Leora's voice reached him, seemingly from a great distance. Direct your attention to the infection pattern. Visualize the counteragent we developed. With enormous effort, Aaron managed to narrow his perception, concentrating on the viral pathways he had studied so intensely. He mentally projected the genetic solution they had engineered, a hybrid of Earth and Illyrian genetic sequences designed to neutralize the Cecid virus, while strengthening the Spire's natural defenses. The Spire's consciousness brushed against his, curious and cautious. Aaron felt it examining his intent, probing the sincerity of his desire to heal rather than harm. For a breathless moment, he feared rejection, but then came acceptance, a wave of relief and gratitude that nearly brought tears to his eyes. "The Spire accepts him," Elder Thaxus announced, his voice reverent. "The communion is established." Now came the most delicate phase. With his consciousness partially merged with the Spire's, Aaron began the process of implementing their genetic solution. It was like performing surgery from inside the patient. He could feel every change, every reaction as the counteragent spread through the Spire's systems. The infected areas resisted, the virus fighting back with programmed aggression. Aaron felt spikes of pain, whether his or the Spire's. He couldn't tell anymore, as the battle raged at the cellular level. "His vital signs are fluctuating," Leora's concerned voice penetrated his trance. "The strain may be too great." "He must complete the process," came Valara's stern reply. "There is no turning back now." Through the haze of shared consciousness, Aaron sensed Zira move closer to the interface platform, her presence somehow strengthening his resolve. He pushed harder, directing the counteragent toward the central nexus of the infection. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, with a surge of energy that arced visibly through the chamber, the Spire's systems began to purge the infection. Red tendrils receded, replaced by healthy blue-green luminescence. The change spread rapidly, following the Spire's neural pathways like a wave of healing light. Aaron felt triumph, again, whether his or the Spire's. He couldn't distinguish, as the last traces of infection were neutralized. But the victory came at a cost. As the communion began to disengage, he felt his consciousness fraying at the edges, struggling to separate from the vast awareness of the Spire. "He's not disengaging properly," Leora's voice sounded panicked now. "The neural feedback is building." "Cut the connection," ordered Valara. "No." This was Zira's voice, commanding and certain. Forced separation could damage both him and the Spire. "There's another way." Through his fading awareness, Aaron sensed Zira step onto the interface platform beside him. She placed her hands on his shoulders, and suddenly her consciousness was there alongside his, a bridge between his human mind and the Spire's alien awareness. "Follow my path back," her thoughts instructed him. "I will guide you." With Zira acting as anchor and interpreter, Aaron gradually disentangled his consciousness from the Spire's vast network. The process was like swimming up from great depths, pressure easing as he approached the surface of normal awareness. When he finally opened his eyes, he found himself on his knees on the interface platform, Zira kneeling beside him with her hands still on his shoulders. The chamber had fallen silent, every Illyrian watching them with expressions ranging from awe to disbelief. "It is done," Elder Thaxus announced into the silence. "The Spire is healed." A ripple of movement spread through the assembly as Illyrians turned their gaze upward, following their example. Aaron looked up to see that the ceiling of the chamber, which opened to the sky, revealed an astonishing sight. The twin suns of Alaris were now framed by an aurora of blue-green energy emanating from the Spire, visible proof of its restored health. "The sky changes color," Leora whispered, moving to Aaron's other side to help him stand. "The sign of the Covenant." As Aaron regained his footing, still disoriented from the intense neural connection, Valara approached. Her expression was complex. Reluctant respect mingled with resignation. "Dr. Aaron Hollis of Earth," she intoned formally, "you have healed the living spire and saved Alaris from destruction. By the Galactic Covenant established in the year 2558, you are recognized as Covenant holder." She turned to Zira and Leora, who had positioned themselves on either side of Aaron in what he now recognized as a ceremonial stance. Zira and Leora of the Biocast, witnesses to the healing, are bound by the covenant of service to Dr. Hollis until such time as the spire's life flow is fully stabilized. "Do you acknowledge this bond?" "We acknowledge and accept the covenant," they responded in unison, their voices solemn. Aaron wanted to protest, to reject this archaic tradition that seemed to reduce his companions to servitude. But the ceremony continued before he could speak. "The communion of intent has marked you, Aaron Hollis," Valara continued. "Your genetic signature is now recognized by the Spire and all its extensions. You are forever part of Alaris, as Alaris is now part of you." As she spoke, Aaron noticed that the faint blue luminescence of his skin had intensified, now pulsing in rhythm with the spire itself. More surprisingly, he could still sense the spire's awareness at the edges of his consciousness, a lingering connection that felt both alien and strangely comforting. "The ritual is complete," Valara concluded. "But our challenges are not." The Cessid swarm approaches, drawn by the very energy signature that confirms the spire's healing. We must prepare for their arrival. As the assembly disbanded to begin defense preparations, Aaron turned to Zira and Leora, determined to address the Covenant situation. "Look," he began, "I appreciate everything you've done, but this service bond, it's not something I believe in or would ever enforce. You're both free to—" "With respect, Dr. Hollis," Zira interrupted, her tone formal, yet intense. "This is not a matter of your belief or enforcement. The Covenant is part of who we are, our honor, our tradition, our law. And, practically speaking," Leora added more gently, "your understanding of our world is still limited. You will need guides in the challenges to come, particularly regarding the Cessid threat. Besides," Zira continued with what might have been the ghost of a smile, "you have yet to demonstrate that you can survive on Alaris without our assistance." Aaron sighed, recognizing the truth in their words, even as he remained uncomfortable with the implications of the Covenant. "Fine. But this is a partnership, not servitude. I won't give orders or expect obedience. The nature of service is determined by both parties," Leora acknowledged. "We can define our bond as circumstances require." Before they could discuss further, Commander Mavis approached, her expression grim. "The Galactic Collective is demanding immediate access to the genetic solution you developed," she informed Aaron. "They believe it could be weaponized against the Cessid swarm." "Weaponized?" Aaron's scientific instincts immediately rebelled. "It was designed specifically for the Spire's genetic structure. Using it as a weapon could have unpredictable consequences." "Nevertheless, the Collective's military division insists on full disclosure," Mavis replied. "They're invoking emergency protocols that would compel your cooperation." Aaron glanced at his companions, seeing his own concern reflected in their expressions. "What would happen if this technology were militarized?" he asked them. "The Spire Genesis mark, as you've named it, contains elements of both Earth and Alarian genetics," Leora explained. "In the wrong hands, it could be modified to target specific genetic markers, potentially becoming a biological weapon of unprecedented selectivity. And if the Cessid managed to adapt to it," Zira added, leaving the grim possibility unspoken. Aaron straightened, his decision made. "Tell the Collective I'll provide a limited version, enough to help defend Alaris, but with the most sensitive components restricted. They can take it or leave it." "They won't be satisfied with that," Mavis warned. Then they can come argue with me personally, Aaron replied, surprised by his own assertiveness. After we've dealt with the immediate ceased threat. As Mavis departed to relay his message, Aaron turned back to Zira and Leora. I'm going to need your help to prepare a defensive version of the solution, something that can repel the swarm without risking broader consequences. The biocast training grounds include a region called the mycelial labyrinth, Zira suggested. It simulates combat conditions against biological threats. We could use it to test defensive applications. And I can modify the neural interface to synchronize with the Spire's early warning systems, Leora added. It would give us real-time data on the swarm's approach and composition. For the first time since arriving on Alaris, Aaron felt a sense of true collaboration with his Alarian companions, not as outsider and guides, but as a cohesive team with complementary skills. Let's get to work, he said, already formulating adaptations to the Spire Genesis mark that could serve as a defensive shield rather than an offensive weapon. We have less than 36 hours to prepare for an invasion. What none of them yet realized was that the Cessid swarm was more than just a parasitic collective, seeking new genetic material to consume. It was an engineered weapon itself, one created long ago from the very life force they had just worked so hard to save. And its arrival would force each of them to confront truths about themselves, their loyalties, and the true nature of the bond that now united them. The mycelial labyrinth stretched before them like a living nightmare, a vast underground network of fungal growths that twisted and pulsed with bioluminescent warning patterns. Massive spore pods hung from the ceiling, occasionally releasing clouds of particles that drifted through the humid air before being captured by specialized collection organisms. The labyrinth serves as both training ground and biological research facility, Leora explained, as she calibrated her equipment. The mycelia respond to neural commands, reconfiguring to simulate various threat scenarios. Aaron surveyed the alien landscape with a mixture of scientific fascination and primal unease. And you think this environment will help us test defensive applications of the Spire Genesis mark? The fungal network shares certain genetic markers with the Spire, Leora confirmed. It's a smaller, less complex system, but suitable for our purposes. Zira had changed from her ceremonial armor into more practical combat gear, equipped with multiple weapons that Aaron couldn't identify. She moved with practiced efficiency, setting up perimeter sensors around their testing area. The labyrinth has offensive capabilities, she warned. Even in training mode, it presents real dangers. Stay within the safe zone I'm establishing unless directly instructed otherwise. Over the next several hours, they conducted a series of increasingly complex tests. Aaron would modify the Spire Genesis mark's genetic sequence. Leora would integrate it into the labyrinth systems, and Zira would engage the resulting defenses in simulated combat to test their effectiveness. Progress was promising, but frustratingly slow. Each iteration of the defensive shield showed improvements, but none achieved the comprehensive protection they would need against a full Cessid assault. During a brief rest period, Aaron found himself studying his companions with renewed interest. The Covenant bond had created a subtle but perceptible change in their interaction, a heightened awareness of each other's movements and reactions that transcended normal teamwork. I can still sense the Spire, he confessed to Leora as she analyzed their latest test results. Even here, kilometers away from the central core? Is that normal? The communion leaves permanent neural pathways, she confirmed. Most Illyrians maintain a constant low-level connection to the Spire throughout their lives. For an outsider, the sensation should fade over time, but never completely disappear. And the Covenant. Does it create similar connections? Leora hesitated, glancing toward Zira, who was adjusting her equipment several meters away, but whose sudden stillness suggested she was listening intently. The Covenant bond is different, Leora finally said. More personal. Traditionally, It facilitates communication and coordination between the bonded individuals. Some ancient texts speak of heightened empathic awareness developing over time. "So you can sense what I'm feeling?" Aaron asked, uncertain whether to be intrigued or disturbed by the possibility. "Not specifically," Leora assured him. "But general emotional states, physical distress, these become more apparent between covenant-bound companions. It's an evolutionary advantage, ensuring that those who serve can anticipate needs and respond to threats more efficiently." Before Aaron could question further, Zyra approached, her expression serious. "Commander Mavis reports that the Cessid advanced scouts have breached the outer atmosphere. We have less time than anticipated." "How long?" Aaron demanded, immediately returning to the genetic sequences he'd been modifying. 24 hours until the main swarm arrives," Zyra replied. "But the scouts will reach the spire's outer perimeter within 3 hours." "We need to accelerate our testing," Leora said, already recalibrating the equipment. "Zyra, can you increase the labyrinth's threat simulation to maximum intensity?" "That would exceed safety protocols," Zyra warned. "The labyrinth at full capacity can produce genuinely lethal responses." "Then we'll have to be careful," Aaron decided, the urgency of their situation overriding caution. "We need combat-realistic conditions to properly test the shield's effectiveness." Zyra nodded grimly. "I'll make the adjustments. But you must both wear protective gear." She retrieved specialized suits from a nearby storage unit, handing them to Aaron and Leora. "These will provide limited defense against the labyrinth's more aggressive responses." As they prepared for the intensified testing, Aaron's communication device activated with an incoming message from the central spire chamber. "Dr. Hollis." Chieftain Valara's stern face appeared on the display. "The Galactic Collective representatives are most displeased with your refusal to share the complete Spire Genesis formula. They are threatening to invoke Article 23 of the Planetary Defense Treaty, which would place all Illyrian research under direct collective control." "That's outrageous," Aaron replied, his anger flaring. "The formula is specifically calibrated to Illyrian biology. Attempting to weaponize it could create cross-species contamination on a galactic scale." "Your concerns are noted," Valara said, her tone suggesting she might actually agree with him, despite her official position. "However, the Collective's military representatives argue that the Cessid threat warrants extraordinary measures. Tell them I'm currently testing defensive applications that will be shared once verified," Aaron offered. "That should buy us some time." "Very well," Valara nodded. "But be warned. They have dispatched a science vessel to arrive concurrent with their military support. They expect full cooperation upon arrival." After the communication ended, Aaron turned to find both Zyra and Leora watching him with expressions he couldn't quite interpret. "What?" he asked. "You withhold information from your own people to protect ours," Leora observed. "That is unexpected." "The Collective isn't my people," Aaron corrected. "I'm an Earth scientist who happens to work with them, and I don't trust anyone who jumps straight to weaponizing a medical breakthrough." "Nevertheless," Zyra said, "your choice places you in opposition to powerful interests. The Covenant bond now serves a more practical purpose. We are obligated to protect you from both the Cessid and potentially your own collective." "Let's focus on one threat at a time," Aaron suggested, uncomfortable with the implications of having his companions shield him from his own species' politics. "The Cessid scouts are our immediate concern." They resumed testing with the labyrinth's threat level increased to maximum. The environment responded with alarming aggression. Fungal growths now actively attacked their positions. Spore pods released toxins that their suits barely filtered, and the very ground beneath them became unstable. Despite the heightened danger, the conditions provided exactly what they needed. Aaron quickly identified weaknesses in their defensive formula and made real-time adjustments. Leora's expertise with Illyrian genetics proved invaluable in stabilizing the more volatile components, while Zyra's combat experience helped them develop practical deployment strategies. After a particularly intense simulation that left them all breathing hard, Aaron reviewed the latest results with growing excitement. "I think we've got it," he announced. "This version of the shield creates a genetic firewall that the Cicid parasites can't penetrate. Their assimilation enzymes are rendered ineffective, and the shield actually counterattacks by rewriting portions of the Cicid genome." "But can it be deployed planet-wide in time?" Leora questioned, already calculating resource requirements. "Not directly," Aaron admitted. "But if we integrate it into the Spire's core systems, it could transmit the protective sequence to all connected organisms, essentially vaccinating the entire ecosystem." "That would require another communion ritual," Zira pointed out. "The strain of a second neural connection so soon after the first could be dangerous for you." Aaron was about to respond when a violent tremor shook the labyrinth. Fungal structures collapsed around them as emergency alarms blared. "The scouts have reached the outer defense perimeter," Zira announced, checking her tactical display. "They're attacking the coral ridge, much larger than anticipated. These aren't scouts. They're the vanguard of the main swarm." "We need to get to the Spire immediately," Aaron decided, gathering their equipment. "How quickly can we reach the central chamber?" "The direct routes will be chaos," Leora warned. "Emergency protocols will have sealed most transit pathways." "Then we create our own route," Zira stated, drawing her luminescent blade. She approached one of the labyrinth's walls and, with precise movements, began cutting through the living tissue. "The biocast emergency passages connect to maintenance tunnels beneath the central chamber. We can bypass the main security checkpoints." As they hurried through the passage Zira created, Aaron felt a sudden stab of pain that wasn't his own, a psychic echo transmitted through his lingering connection to the Spire. "They've breached the outer defenses," he gasped, stumbling momentarily. "I can feel the Spire's distress." Leora steadied him, her expression confirming his assessment. "The Cicid are moving faster than any recorded instance. They must have evolved specifically for this assault." Their journey through the maintenance tunnels was a blur of cramped passages, emergency barriers, and occasional confrontations with security systems that failed to recognize their clearance in the midst of the crisis. Throughout, Aaron maintained a tenuous awareness of the Spire's condition, feeling its pain increase as the Cicid parasites began attaching to its outer structures. When they finally emerged into the lower levels of the central Spire chamber, they found a scene of controlled chaos. Coral armor guards were establishing defensive positions. Mind Spire technicians were frantically monitoring data flows, and Commander Mavis was coordinating with Galactic Collective representatives via holographic communication. "The main swarm will arrive within 15 hours, Mavis informed them as they approached. "The vanguard has already established footholds on the Spire's outer segments. Our conventional defenses are slowing them, but not stopping their advance." "We have a solution," Aaron announced, transferring their test data to the central system. "A modified version of the Spire Genesis mark that creates a genetic firewall against Cicid assimilation. But we need to deploy it through the Spire itself to reach the entire ecosystem quickly enough." "Another communion?" Valara questioned, having joined their group. "The Spire's systems are already stressed by the Cicid attack. A second connection could destabilize both you and the core." "We don't have time for gradual deployment," Aaron insisted. "Every minute we delay, the Cicid establish deeper footholds. The Spire needs to transmit the protection throughout its network immediately." After a moment of tense consideration, Valara nodded grimly. "Prepare the interface, but be warned, Dr. Hollis, a second communion so soon after the first has never been attempted by anyone, let alone an off-worlder. The consequences are unpredictable." As preparations for the second ritual began with urgency, bordering on desperation, Aaron pulled Zira and Leora aside. "I need you both to understand something," he said quietly. "This connection will be more dangerous than the first. If something goes wrong, if I don't come back from this, Get the formula to someone who can implement it another way. The planet's survival matters more than any individual. We will not allow that to happen, Zira stated with absolute conviction. The Covenant bond. Forget the Covenant, Aaron interrupted. This isn't about ancient laws or traditions. It's about doing what's necessary to save lives. Which is precisely what the Covenant exists to ensure, Leora pointed out gently. It binds us to your protection, yes, but also to your purpose. We serve the mission as much as the man. Before Aaron could respond, Elder Thaxus approached to inform them the interface was ready. The ritual would begin immediately, with a modification. Zira and Leora would maintain physical contact with Aaron throughout, acting as anchors to help him return from the deeper communion required for this task. As Aaron positioned himself on the interface platform, with Zira and Leora flanking him, he felt a curious sense of rightness despite the danger ahead. Whatever happened in the next few minutes would either save Alaris or doom it, and would irrevocably alter his relationship with both the planet and the two warriors who now stood beside him as equals in purpose, if not in status, under galactic law. The second communion hit Aaron like a tidal wave of pure sensation. Where the first connection had been a gradual immersion, this was immediate and overwhelming, the spire's consciousness engulfing his own with desperate intensity. Pain was the first coherent impression. The agony of invasion as ceased parasites attached themselves to the spire's outer structures, injecting assimilation enzymes that began breaking down and rewriting Illyrian genetic codes. Aaron felt each breach as if it were happening to his own body, a sensation so intense he would have screamed had he still been aware of having a physical form. Through the maelstrom of shared consciousness, he sensed Zira and Leora's presence, twin anchors keeping him from being lost entirely in the spire's vast awareness. Their minds touched his with familiar patterns, reminding him of his purpose, his identity, his task. With monumental effort, Aaron focused his consciousness on the genetic firewall they had developed. He visualized it spreading through the spire's neural pathways, a protective code that would recognize and neutralize the ceased genetic attack. The spire understood immediately, its vast intelligence grasping the solution's purpose and potential. But there was hesitation, concern about unintended consequences, about altering the delicate balance of Alaris's ecosystem with this new genetic element. Trust me, Aaron projected the thought with all the conviction he could muster. This will protect, not harm. He felt rather than saw the spire's acceptance, a shift in the shared consciousness that opened pathways for implementation. Aaron began the complex process of integrating the Spire Genesis mark into the Spire's core systems, guiding its deployment along neural pathways that extended throughout the planet. As the protective code spread, Aaron became aware of another presence within the communion, something alien and predatory, the collective consciousness of the Cessid swarm, already establishing a counter-connection to the Spire through its parasitic footholds. With shock, Aaron realized he could perceive the swarm's intent directly. It wasn't merely seeking to consume Illyrian genetic material. It was attempting to assimilate the entire Spire network, to make it an extension of the Cecid Collective. More disturbing still, he sensed a familiarity in the swarm's genetic pattern, an echo of Illyrian genetics, twisted and corrupted, but unmistakably derived from the Spire itself. They're not invaders. Aaron projected the realization to Zira and Leora through their shared connection. They're exiles, failed experiments, cast out from Alaris millennia ago. The knowledge struck a chord of recognition within the Spire's consciousness. Ancient memories of early genetic experimentation, of branches of evolution deemed too dangerous and cast into the void. The Cessid hadn't evolved naturally. They had been created, then abandoned when they proved too aggressive, too consuming. And now they had returned, driven by a primal hunger for the genetic library that had spawned them, and perhaps by something deeper, a twisted desire for reunion with their source. This revelation changed everything. The Spire Genesis mark as designed wouldn't just repel the Cecid, it would destroy them utterly. Aaron hesitated, his scientific ethics suddenly at war with the immediate need to protect Alaris. These were sentient beings, however hostile, genetically related to the very world they now threatened. We must proceed. Leora's thoughts reached him, sensing his moral dilemma. They cannot be reasoned with. Their evolution has gone too far toward pure consumption. There may be another way, Aaron countered, already modifying the genetic code as it deployed. Not destruction, but redirection. A genetic signal that will repel, rather than annihilate. He felt Zira's skepticism through their link. You risk the safety of an entire planet on moral principle? I risk it on scientific principle, Aaron corrected. Genocide is never the answer, especially when we're dealing with beings that are, in essence, Alaris's own children. The modification was delicate work, requiring precision that strained the limits of the communion interface. Aaron felt his consciousness beginning to fragment under the pressure, his identity blurring at the edges as the Spire's vast awareness threatened to subsume him entirely. Hold on, Zira's mental voice commanded, her presence in the link strengthening. Focus on us. We are your anchors. Aaron clung to their familiar patterns in the chaotic sea of consciousness. Leora's ordered, analytical thought structures. Zira's disciplined, protective presence. They had become his touchstones in this alien landscape of shared minds. With their support steadying him, Aaron completed the modification. The Spire Genesis mark spread throughout the network, a wave of protective coding that raced ahead of the Cecid infiltration. Where they met, the parasitic attachments faltered, their assimilation enzymes rendered inert by the genetic firewall. But instead of destroying the Cecid organisms outright, the modified code created a biological repulsion effect, a signal that triggered retreat responses in the swarm's collective consciousness. It was the genetic equivalent of a warning beacon. This world is not for you. Turn back. Through the communion, Aaron sensed the swarm's confusion, then anger, then fear, as its advance was halted. The collective mind probed the firewall, seeking weaknesses, but found none. Gradually, reluctantly, the vanguard began to withdraw. With the immediate threat contained, Aaron turned his attention to the damaged sections of the Spire. The first infection had been healed, but the Cecid attack had created new wounds that needed addressing. Working in concert with the Spire's own regenerative systems, Aaron guided the healing process, reinforcing neural pathways and stabilizing genetic structures. The work was exhausting, draining his consciousness until he felt himself beginning to fade. Disengaging from the communion was becoming increasingly difficult, the lines between his mind and the Spire's blurring dangerously. Aaron! Leora's mental voice called urgently. You must return now. Your neural patterns are becoming too integrated with the Spire. Follow our connection back, Zira added, her presence in the link intensifying with protective concern. Aaron tried to withdraw, to trace the path back to his physical form, but the Spire's consciousness seemed reluctant to release him. He had become too valuable, too integrated into its systems. The Spire is trying to keep him. Leora's alarm vibrated through the connection. It cannot have him. Zira's response was fierce, determined. He belongs with us. In that moment of crisis, something unprecedented occurred. The Covenant bond, until now a legal and cultural construct, manifested as a tangible force within the communion. Zira and Leora's connection to Aaron strengthened beyond what the ritual had established, forming a triangle of mutual belonging that transcended the one-directional service the Covenant traditionally demanded. Together, they created a pathway that the Spire recognized and respected, a connection that acknowledged Aaron's bond to Alaris while asserting his separate identity. Reluctantly, the Spire's consciousness receded, allowing Aaron to follow the lifeline his companions had created back to physical awareness. The return to his body was jarring. Aaron gasped as his senses reoriented to normal perception. The cool air of the chamber, the sound of urgent voices, the weight of his limbs. He found himself still on the interface platform, Zira and Leora supporting him on either side, their expressions etched with concern and relief. "It worked," he managed to say, his voice rough. "The Cessid are retreating. The spire is healing." Around them, monitoring stations confirmed his statement. Displays showed the swarm withdrawing from Illyrian orbit, their biological signatures registering confusion and disarray. The spire's neural pathways glowed with renewed health. The infection completely purged and the damage from the Cecid attack already beginning to repair. "Extraordinary," Elder Thaxis breathed, examining the data. "Not only have you repelled the invasion, but you've done so without destroying the Cessid entirely. A more merciful solution than we had contemplated." "They're still a threat," Commander Mavis cautioned, approaching with Chieftain Valara. "They may regroup and return with new adaptations." "The genetic firewall will evolve with the spire," Aaron explained, still leaning heavily on his companions for support. "Any future attack will be met with an updated defense." Valara studied him with new respect. "You have done more than heal our world, Dr. Hollis. You have shown wisdom in the application of power. The Council acknowledges this debt." Speaking of acknowledgement," Mavis interjected, "the Galactic Collective representatives are demanding an immediate conference. They've detected the Cecid retreat and want full details on the method used." "Tell them I'll provide a report after I've had time to recover," Aaron replied, in no condition for a political confrontation. "And make it clear that the solution was specifically calibrated to Illyrian biology. Any attempt to weaponize it for broader application would be both dangerous and ineffective." As officials dispersed to manage the aftermath of the crisis, Aaron found himself alone with Zira and Leora in a quiet alcove off the main chamber. The enormity of what they had just experienced settled over them in the momentary peace. "What happened in there?" Aaron began, struggling to articulate the profound shift he'd felt in their connection during the communion. "The way you pulled me back, that wasn't just the ritual, was it?" "No," Leora confirmed, her voice soft. "The covenant bond transformed. It has never been recorded in our history that the bond evolved into a triangular connection rather than the traditional hierarchical one." "Meaning what exactly?" "Meaning," Zira explained, meeting his gaze directly, "that while we are still bound to serve you under galactic law, you are now equally bound to us." The Spire recognized this new pattern and accepted it. "So instead of master and servants," Aaron mused, "we're now, what, partners?" "Something like that," Leora agreed, a smile touching her lips. "Though I suspect the Coral Armor Council will be quite disturbed by this development. It contradicts thousands of years of tradition." "It was inevitable," Zira stated with surprising certainty. "The moment you chose to save the Cecid rather than destroy them, placing ethical principle above expedience, the nature of our bond shifted." The conversation was interrupted by an urgent communication from Commander Mavis. The Galactic Collective Science vessel had arrived ahead of schedule and was demanding immediate access to Aaron and his research. "They're not wasting any time," Aaron muttered, pushing himself upright despite his exhaustion. "We need to establish clear boundaries before they start making demands." "You should rest first," Leora insisted, concern evident in her voice. "The double communion has strained your neural pathways beyond safe limits." "There's no time," Aaron countered. "If we wait, they'll take control of the narrative. We need to present a united front, all three castes of Alaris plus Earth science, demonstrating that this solution was a collaborative achievement that belongs to Alaris first and foremost." Zira nodded approvingly. "A strategic approach. We will stand with you." The meeting with the Galactic Collective representatives took place in a formal chamber near the spaceport. The collective had sent both scientific and military personnel, leaving no doubt about their interest in the Spire Genesis Mark's potential applications. Director Halston, a stern-faced human who headed the collective's biosecurity division, wasted no time on pleasantries. Dr. Hollis, your achievement is remarkable, but it represents a technological breakthrough that falls under Section 17 of your contract with the collective. All research and resulting applications are property of the Galactic Collective. Aaron had anticipated this argument. My contract specifies that research conducted using collective resources belongs to the collective. However, the Spire Genesis Mark was developed using primarily Alarian resources and knowledge, with my contribution as an independent consultant invited by the Alarian government. A technicality, Halston dismissed. You were dispatched here on collective authority. As a humanitarian response to a planetary emergency, Aaron countered. And in any case, the solution is biologically bound to Alarian genetics. It cannot be extracted or repurposed without the continuing cooperation of the Spire itself. This was stretching the truth somewhat. Portions of the formula could potentially be adapted, but Aaron knew the collective representatives weren't sufficiently versed in xenogenetics to challenge the claim effectively. Chieftain Valara, showing unexpected solidarity, stepped forward. The Living Spire has incorporated Dr. Hollis's genetic signature into its matrix. Any attempt to extract this technology without Alarian consent would constitute a violation of our sovereign biological rights under Galactic Treaty. Director Halston's expression hardened. This defensive technology could protect countless worlds from CICID incursions. Surely you don't intend to withhold it from the greater galactic community. Not at all, Aaron replied smoothly. I propose a research partnership, Alarian scientists working alongside collective researchers to develop appropriately tailored defenses for other biological systems, but with safeguards to prevent weaponization. Weaponization is not our intent, protested a collective military officer. Then you should have no objection to the safeguards, Leora interjected, her scientific authority evident in her tone. The negotiations continued for hours, with Aaron, supported by Zira and Leora, steadfastly defending the principle of controlled, ethical application of the technology. By the time an agreement was reached, Aaron was swaying on his feet from exhaustion. The final arrangement allowed for limited sharing of the Spire Genesis principles, enough to help other worlds develop defenses against the CICID, but with strict provisions against offensive applications. Alaris would maintain primary control over the technology, with joint research initiatives established under neutral oversight. As the collective representatives departed, temporarily satisfied, if not entirely pleased, Aaron finally allowed himself to be led to his quarters for much-needed rest. The events of the past several days had pushed him to his physical and mental limits. You should sleep for at least 12 hours, Leora advised, her concern evident as she monitored his vital signs. The neural stress from the double communion needs time to stabilize. Stay with me, Aaron requested as exhaustion began to claim him. Both of you. I don't want to be alone if the Spire tries to reconnect while I'm unconscious. Zyra and Leora exchanged a glance that now seemed less mysterious to Aaron. He could almost sense the communication passing between them, an echo of their shared experience in the communion. We will remain, Zyra assured him, taking a position near the door that managed to be both protective and respectful of his privacy. The bond will help stabilize your neural patterns, Leora added, settling into a chair near his bedside with a datapad to monitor his condition. Rest now, Aaron. We have much to discuss when you wake. As Aaron drifted toward sleep, he found himself reflecting on the strange path that had brought him to this moment. Saving an alien world, becoming bonded to its guardian warriors through ancient law, and now, standing at the crossroads of interstellar politics. None of it was what he had expected when accepting this mission, yet he couldn't bring himself to regret any of it. His last conscious thought before sleep claimed him was that the Covenant, for all its archaic trappings, had given him something unexpected. Not servants, but allies who understood him on a level few humans ever could. Whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them together, bound not by obligation, but by something far more meaningful that had taken root during their shared communion with the heart of a living world. The next days on Alaris passed in a blur of diplomatic meetings, scientific documentation, and cultural integration. As Aaron recovered from the neural strain of the double communion, Zira and Leora remained constant presences, alternating their duties between protecting him from overzealous collective representatives and helping him navigate the complex social hierarchies of Valerian society. One morning, approximately a week after the Cessid retreat, Aaron stood on a balcony overlooking Coral Spire City, marveling at how quickly he had adapted to the alien environment. His skin still retained a faint blue luminescence, a permanent marker of his connection to the spire, and he found he could sense subtle changes in the planet's biological rhythms without conscious effort. "You are becoming more Alerian with each passing day," Leora observed, joining him at the balcony's edge. "Your cellular structure continues to incorporate elements unique to our world." "Is that dangerous?" Aaron asked, though he felt no concern, only curiosity. "Not dangerous, no, but significant." Leora's expression was contemplative. "Few off-worlders have ever integrated so completely with our ecosystem. The Spire recognizes you now as kindred." "And yet I'm still human," Aaron mused. "Still an outsider in many ways." "A bridge between worlds," came Zyra's voice, as she too joined them, having completed her morning security checks. "Neither fully one nor the other, but connecting both." The description felt right to Aaron, a crystallization of what he had been sensing about his own changing identity. He was still fundamentally himself, yet permanently altered by his experiences here. The same could be said for his relationship with the two Biocast warriors who now stood beside him. Ostensibly, his servants under galactic law, but in practice, something far more complex. "The Galactic Collective Science vessel departs today," Zira informed them. "Director Halston has finally accepted that he cannot compel further concessions regarding the Spire Genesis technology." "And the Coral Armor Council?" Aaron inquired. "Have they relaxed their security restrictions?" "Somewhat," Leora replied. "Chieftain Valara has granted you honorary status within the Mindspire caste, which allows greater access to their archives and research facilities. It's an unprecedented honor for an off-worlder. I suspect it's less about honoring me and more about keeping me where they can see me," Aaron remarked with a wry smile. "Perhaps initially," Leora acknowledged, "but your actions have earned genuine respect. The way you modified the Spire Genesis mark to repel rather than destroy the Cessid, that resonated deeply with the core philosophies of all three castes." A comfortable silence fell among them as they watched the city awakening below. Alerians of all castes beginning their daily routines, the living architecture responding to their movements with subtle shifts in color and form. It was a scene of harmony and complexity that still filled Aaron with wonder. "I received a communication from Earth this morning," he said eventually, breaking the quiet. "The Intergalactic Biological Institute wants me to return and present my findings. They're particularly interested in the cross-species genetic techniques we developed." He felt, rather than saw Zira and Leora tense beside him. "The Covenant," Zira began. "I know," Aaron interrupted gently. "According to galactic law, you're bound to accompany me wherever I go until the Spire's life flow is fully stabilized. Which raises the question, what constitutes fully stabilized?" Leora considered this. "Traditionally, it would mean the complete restoration of all systems affected by the crisis, a process that could take years, given the extent of the damage caused by both the original infection and the Cecid attack. But there's room for interpretation," Zira added, surprising Aaron with her willingness to consider flexibility in the ancient law. "The Covenant exists to ensure the healer maintains a connection to the world they saved. If that connection can be maintained across distance. "What are you suggesting?" Aaron asked. "The Galactic Cultural Exchange Program," Leora proposed. "It would provide a formal framework for us to accompany you to Earth as cultural ambassadors, rather than bound servants. The distinction would be meaningful in how others perceive our relationship. And how we perceive it ourselves," Zira added quietly. Aaron studied his companions, seeing beyond their alien features to the individuals he had come to respect and care for deeply. The communion had created bonds between them that transcended cultural or legal frameworks, a shared experience that had permanently altered all three of them. "I would welcome your company on Earth," he told them sincerely. "Not as servants or even as protectors, but as colleagues and friends. There's so much we could learn from each other." "And much we could teach your people about Alaris," Leora agreed, her eyes bright with intellectual enthusiasm. "Though I suspect your world presents its own dangers," Zira observed, ever the warrior. "Different from the Cessid or the mycelial labyrinth, but no less real." "Earth has its challenges," Aaron admitted, "but nothing we can't handle together." Their conversation was interrupted by the arrival of Commander Mavis, who approached with the formal bearing that indicated official business. "Dr. Hollis," she greeted him. "The Galactic Collective Council has reviewed your handling of the Illyrian crisis and the subsequent Cessid threat. They have authorized me to offer you a new position, Scientific Liaison to the Illyrian Cooperative." "That sounds suspiciously like they want me to continue pushing for access to the Spire Genesis technology," Aaron observed. Mavis's expression confirmed his suspicion. "Politics aside, the position would allow you to continue your research here, while maintaining your Earth citizenship and connections. It represents a middle ground that might satisfy all parties." "Including Zira and Leora? What would their status be under this arrangement?" "The covenant remains in effect, but with a formal acknowledgement of the unusual nature of your particular bond." Mavis glanced between the three of them with knowing eyes. "The collective has agreed to recognize them as official representatives of Alaris, rather than personal servants, a distinction that carries diplomatic privileges while honoring the traditional requirements." It was, Aaron had to admit, an elegant solution to the complicated situation they found themselves in. He looked to his companions, seeking their reactions. "It would allow us to move freely between worlds," Leora noted, clearly intrigued by the possibility, "and to fulfill the Covenant's true purpose, building lasting connections between Alaris and those who aid her," Zira added, her usual stoicism softening. "There is one additional matter," Mavis continued. "Chieftain Valara has requested your presence at a formal ceremony tonight. The Coral Armor Council wishes to officially acknowledge your contribution and clarify certain aspects of the Covenant as it applies to your unique situation." After Mavis departed, Aaron turned to his companions with a raised eyebrow. "Any idea what that's about?" "The Council rarely alters tradition," Leora said, her expression thoughtful. "But our bond with you has no precedent in recorded history. The triangular connection that formed during the Second Communion challenged fundamental assumptions about the Covenant's nature." "They may be seeking to establish new protocols," Zira suggested, "to address the reality that our bond is one of mutual service, rather than hierarchical obligation. Whatever they're planning, I hope it doesn't involve another neural interface," Aaron said with feeling. 2 communions was enough for one lifetime." Leora laughed, the sound like wind chimes. "No, the physical ceremony is much simpler, though you might find the cultural implications equally overwhelming. The ceremony was held in an open-air amphitheater, atop one of Coral Spire City's highest points. From this elevation, the living spire was visible in the distance, its crystalline structure gleaming in the light of Alaris's setting suns. Representatives from all 3 castes filled the tiered seating, creating a living mosaic of coral adornments, bioluminescent patterns, and crystalline cranial formations. Aaron, dressed in a formal biosuit designed specifically for the occasion, stood with Zira and Leora at the center of the amphitheater. The suit incorporated elements of all three Illyrian castes: subtle coral patterns at the shoulders, luminescent tracery along the arms, reminiscent of biocaste markings, and a collar that echoed the crystalline structures of the Mind Spire caste. It was a symbolic gesture of integration that wasn't lost on the assembled crowd. Chieftain Valara, adorned in her most elaborate, ceremonial coral armor, addressed the gathering. Her voice, amplified by the amphitheater's natural acoustics, carried easily to every corner. People of Alaris, representatives of the Galactic Collective, honored guests, we gather to acknowledge an unprecedented chapter in our world's history. For the first time since the establishment of the Galactic Covenant of Service, an off-worlder has not only healed our sacred spire, but has formed a bond with it that transcends traditional boundaries. She turned to face Aaron directly. Dr. Aaron Hollis of Earth, you came to us as a scientist and became something more, a bridge between worlds, a catalyst for evolution in both our biological and cultural understanding. Valara's gaze shifted to include Zira and Leora. The biocaste warriors who stood witness to the healing have fulfilled their sacred duty by accepting the covenant bond. Yet that bond has transformed in ways our ancestors could not have foreseen, becoming a connection of equals rather than the traditional hierarchy of service. Murmurs spread through the crowd, some approving, others clearly uncertain about this departure from tradition. After consultation with the Organic Synod and the Mind Spire elders, Valara continued, the Council has determined that this new form of covenant should be formally recognized and honored. It represents not a dilution of our traditions, but an evolution of them, much as our world itself continues to evolve under the Spire's guidance. Elder Thaxus stepped forward, carrying a crystalline container that pulsed with energy. This essence, drawn from the healed core of the living spire, contains the genetic signatures of all three participants in the communion, human and Illyrian combined in harmony. At Thaxus's gesture, three smaller crystals rose from the container, each glowing with a distinctive color. One azure like Aaron's earthborn eyes, one silver-violet like Zyra's, and one deep emerald like Leora's. These covenant crystals embody the triangular bond you have formed, Thaxus explained. They will maintain your connection even across the vast distances of space, allowing each of you to sense the other's well-being and, in times of great need, to share strength across the bond. Aaron accepted the azure crystal, feeling it warm to his touch and pulse in rhythm with his heartbeat. As Zira and Leora took their respective crystals, he felt the bond between them momentarily intensify, a flash of shared awareness that confirmed the crystal's function was more than symbolic. The covenant remains in effect, Valara declared for the record, but is hereby modified to acknowledge the mutual nature of the bond. Zira and Leora of the Biocaste are recognized as covenant partners to Aaron Hollis of Earth, with all rights and responsibilities thereof. They will accompany him as Illyrian ambassadors under the Galactic Cultural Exchange Program, maintaining their connection to the Spire through him, while expanding our understanding of worlds beyond our own. The formal language didn't capture the full reality of what had developed between them, Aaron thought, but it provided a framework that respected both tradition and the unique circumstances of their bond. The remainder of the ceremony involved ritualistic acknowledgments from representatives of each caste, formal registration of the modified covenant with the Galactic Collective's legal representatives, and the presentation of gifts that would allow Aaron to maintain certain aspects of Illyrian biology even on Earth, specialized nutrients, biocompatible technology, and cultural artifacts. When at last the formalities concluded, and the three of them were able to withdraw to a quiet garden overlooking the city, Aaron felt simultaneously exhausted and exhilarated. The weight of ceremony had been oppressive, but the outcome, A formally recognized partnership that respected their individual autonomy while acknowledging their connection seemed worth the ordeal. "So," he said, examining the crystal that now hung from a cord around his neck, "we're officially covenant partners. What exactly does that mean in practical terms?" "It means we accompany you to Earth as equals, rather than servants," Leora explained. "We represent Alaris while learning from your world, and you remain connected to our world through us, and through your permanent link to the Spire." "It also means," Zira added, her normally stern expression softening slightly, "that the bond between us is acknowledged as mutual. We are bound to protect you, yes, but you are equally bound to honor and protect our connection to Alaris." "I can live with that," Aaron said, finding the arrangement far more comfortable than the original one-sided servitude the Covenant had seemed to demand. "Though I suspect Earth is going to be quite an adjustment for both of you." "We have studied your world extensively in preparation for this possibility," Leora assured him, her eyes bright with intellectual curiosity. "The biological diversity alone will provide years of comparative research opportunities. And your defensive capabilities, while primitive compared to Illyrian bioluminescent weaponry, have their own ingenious aspects," Zira added, sounding almost eager for the challenge of mastering new combat techniques. Aaron couldn't help but laugh. "I think Earth is in for as much of a shock as you are. Two Illyrian warriors with glowing weapons and advanced biological knowledge aren't exactly standard research assistants at the Institute." "We are not merely research assistants," Zira corrected, her pride evident. "We are Covenant partners and cultural ambassadors." "And friends," Leora added softly. "That transcends any formal designation, does it not?" "It does," Aaron agreed, surprised by how natural it felt to include these alien beings in such a fundamentally human category. The communion had changed something essential in how he perceived them. Not as exotic others, but as kindred spirits whose differences enhanced, rather than inhibited, connection. Their departure from Alaris took place 2 weeks later, after Aaron had completed the documentation of the Spire Genesis mark and established protocols for its ethical application. The Galactic Collective provided a specialized transport vessel equipped with environmental controls that would ease the transition between worlds for his Illyrian companions. As they prepared to board, Commander Mavis approached for a final word. "The Collective Council is still not entirely pleased with the restrictions you've placed on the technology," she informed Aaron. "Expect continued pressure once you return to Earth." "Let them pressure all they want," Aaron replied. "The Spire Genesis mark belongs to Alaris first and foremost. Any wider application will happen on terms that respect that fact." Mavis smiled slightly. "I believe they're beginning to understand that arguing with someone who has the backing of both a living planet and 2 elite biocaste warriors is an exercise in futility." Chieftain Valara made a briefer farewell, her formal reserve still largely intact, despite the unprecedented events of recent weeks. "Remember that you carry Alaris with you now, Dr. Hollis, not just in the genetic changes to your biology, but in the responsibility you bear as a Covenant holder." "I won't forget," Aaron assured her. "And I'll make sure the Collective doesn't forget either." Valara turned to Zira and Leora. "You honor the biocaste with this mission. Learn what you can of Earth's defensive capabilities and biological systems. Such knowledge may prove vital should the Seasid return in greater numbers." "We will serve both worlds faithfully," Zira promised with formal dignity. "And bridge the gap between them," Leora added with more warmth. As their ship lifted from Illyrian soil and ascended toward the stars, Aaron gazed down at the receding planet, the vast coral structures of its cities, the luminous forests, and at the center of it all, the living spire, now pulsing with renewed health. He could still feel it at the edges of his awareness, a gentle presence that had become an integral part of his consciousness. "It's strange," he confessed to his companions as they joined him at the viewport. "A month ago, I was just a geneticist with a specialized skill set. Now I'm permanently connected to an alien planet, bound by ancient laws to two warriors from another species, and carrying technology that could transform interstellar relations. Life rarely follows predictable patterns, Leora observed philosophically. The most significant developments often arise from unexpected mutations. Speaking as a scientist or as a warrior? Aaron asked with a smile. Both, she replied. Knowledge and protection are complementary aspects of the same imperative, to preserve life in all its complexity. And to adapt when necessary, Zira added, her gaze fixed on the stars ahead, rather than the world behind. As we are adapting now. Aaron studied his companions, Zira with her disciplined bearing and unexpected depths of loyalty, Leora with her brilliant mind and gentle wisdom. Through the spire's gift, he could sense their emotions beneath their composed exteriors. Excitement, apprehension, curiosity about the journey ahead. Earth isn't going to know what hit it, he remarked, feeling a sudden surge of anticipation himself. Then we shall endeavor to make a favorable impression, Leora replied with gentle humor. After ensuring appropriate security measures, Zira amended, ever the protector, as their ship accelerated toward the jump point that would begin their journey to Earth. Aaron reflected that the Covenant, for all its archaic trappings, had given him something he hadn't realized he needed. Not servants, but partners who understood aspects of the universe he was only beginning to comprehend. Together, they would navigate the challenges ahead, whether they came in the form of collective politics, Earth's cultural adjustments to Illyrian visitors, or the lingering threat of the Cessid swarm. And perhaps, in bridging their two worlds, they would forge something new, a connection that transcended traditional boundaries and opened possibilities neither civilization had yet imagined. The vast expanse of space stretched before them, stars blurring as the ship entered faster than light travel. Aaron felt the weight of the Covenant crystal against his chest, a tangible reminder of the bond he now shared with his companions. Whatever the future held, they would face it together, by galactic law and by choice. 12 months later, the gardens of the Earth Intergalactic Biological Institute bloomed under the warm spring sunshine. Aaron sat beneath a cherry tree in full blossom, making notes on his latest cross-referencing of Earth and Illyrian genetic structures. The year had brought remarkable discoveries, as well as its share of challenges. The Institute Board has approved our proposal, Leora announced, approaching with a tablet displaying the official notification. Her formerly solid blue skin now showed subtle patterns of adaptation to Earth's environment, evidence of her own biological evolution during their time here. Full funding for the Comparative Xenogenetics Department, with you as director and me as research lead. That's excellent news, Aaron replied, genuinely pleased. The department would provide legitimate institutional backing for their continued work with the Spire Genesis technology. Under ethical guidelines they had helped establish. And the security protocols? Came Zira's voice as she joined them, returning from her daily perimeter check. A year on Earth had done little to diminish her warrior's vigilance, though she had adapted her protective routines to the less hostile environment. Approved as well, Leora confirmed. All research will remain under Biocast oversight, with secure communication channels to the MindSpire cast for consultation. Zira nodded with satisfaction. Over the months, she had gradually shifted from viewing Earth as potential enemy territory to seeing it as an extension of her protection mandate, a world connected to Alaris through their shared bond. The Galactic Collective representatives are still lobbying for fewer restrictions, Aaron noted, setting aside his work to give his companions his full attention. But, after the incident with the unauthorized replication attempt, they're finding fewer allies for their position. The incident had occurred 6 months earlier, an attempt by overzealous collective scientists to reverse engineer the Spire Genesis mark from incomplete data. The resulting genetic cascade had nearly destroyed a research station before Aaron, Zyra, and Leora had intervened, demonstrating conclusively why the technology needed to remain under strict ethical oversight. They learn slowly, Zyra observed dryly. But they learn. Speaking of learning, Leora interjected, her expression brightening. The Cultural Exchange Symposium yesterday was remarkably successful. The Earth scientists showed genuine interest in Illyrian philosophical approaches to biological research. Your presentation on bioharmonics was the highlight, Aaron told her with a smile. I think you've converted half the genetics department to the idea that communication with research subjects is as important as observation of them. Leora's iridescent eyes shimmered with pleasure at the compliment. Over their time on Earth, her natural scientific curiosity had blossomed into a genuine talent for cross-cultural education, making her a favorite guest lecturer across multiple disciplines. And Zyra's demonstration of biocast defensive techniques has the military liaison officers practically begging for a formal training program, Aaron added, glancing at the warrior with admiration. Zyra made a dismissive gesture, though Aaron could sense her satisfaction through their bond. They are too dependent on mechanical technology. Learning to harmonize biological and technological systems would serve them better than simply copying biocast techniques they cannot fully utilize. Perhaps that can be your next cultural contribution, he suggested. A training program adapted to human physiological limitations. Their conversation was interrupted by the subtle vibration of all three Covenant crystals, a simultaneous pulse that signaled an incoming communication from Alaris. They gathered closer together as Leora activated the holographic interface embedded in her tablet. Elder Thaxus's weathered face appeared, his expression grave. Covenant partners, I bring concerning news. Our long-range sensors have detected unusual activity in the sector where the Seasid swarm retreated. They appear to be gathering resources and possibly adapting to overcome the genetic firewall. Predicted timeline? Zyra asked immediately, shifting to tactical assessment. Unknown, but the Organic Synod estimates no less than 6 months before they could mount another approach to Illyrian space. We should return immediately to help prepare defenses, Leora suggested, already calculating what research would need to be secured before departure. Not yet, Thaxus countered. The Synod believes your work on Earth may hold the key to a more permanent solution. The genetic diversity you've been documenting there could provide patterns for a more comprehensive adaptation of the Spire Genesis mark. A biological library drawn from 2 worlds instead of 1, Aaron realized, immediately grasping the implications. Creating a defensive system too complex for the Seasid to overcome through conventional adaptation. Precisely, Thaxus confirmed. Continue your research with this specific focus. The Spire will maintain the current defenses until a more permanent solution can be implemented. After the communication ended, the 3 of them remained close, their Covenant crystals still glowing with resonant energy. The bond between them had deepened over the months on Earth, evolving from its formal origins into something more nuanced and profound. A connection that balanced duty with genuine affection, respect with increasing intimacy. It seems our work here has taken on new urgency, Aaron observed, his mind already racing with possibilities for integrating Earth's genetic diversity into the Spire's defensive systems. The Sesid are nothing if not persistent, Zyra said grimly. They will not abandon their quest to reclaim their genetic heritage so easily. Then, we must be equally persistent in defending against them, Leora determined. But, without destroying them entirely, they remain, for better or worse, children of Alaris, however estranged. The ethical complexity of their situation was not lost on any of them. The Sesid were simultaneously victims of ancient Illyrian genetic experimentation and genuine threats to countless worlds. Finding a balance between protection and genocide would test not only their scientific ingenuity, but their moral principles as well. We'll find a way, Aaron assured them, his confidence stemming not just from scientific optimism, but from the strength of their bond. Together, we have resources neither world could access alone. As they gathered their materials and headed back toward the Institute's main complex, Aaron reflected on the strange journey that had brought them to this point. What had begun as an emergency response to a planetary crisis had evolved into something far more significant: a bridge between civilizations, a new model of cooperation that transcended traditional boundaries of species, culture, and law. The covenant that had once seemed like an archaic burden had transformed into a framework for connection that honored their differences while celebrating their common purpose. Whatever challenges lay ahead, whether from the Cecid, the Galactic Collective's political machinations, or the inevitable cultural frictions of integrating Illyrian principles into Earth science, they would face them not as master and servants, but as partners bound by choice as much as by law. The sunset painted Earth's sky in shades of orange and pink, so different from Alaris's purple cyan twilight, yet beautiful in its own way. Zyra and Leora paused to observe it, still finding novelty in Earth's daily rhythms after a year of residence. "Your world has its own kind of majesty," Leora observed, her scientific appreciation evident in her tone. "Different, but equally valuable," Zyra agreed, her warrior's assessment having evolved to recognize beauty in unfamiliar forms. "Not my world anymore," Aaron corrected gently. "Our worlds, both of them." The distinction was important, a recognition that through their bond, they had each become citizens of two planets, ambassadors of a connection that might one day extend far beyond their individual lives. As night fell over the Institute grounds and Earth's single moon rose above the horizon, 3 covenant crystals glowed with shared purpose: azure, silver violet, and emerald lights joining to create a harmony all their own. By galactic law, they were bound together. By choice, they had made that bond into something unprecedented, a new pattern of connection that, like the Spire Genesis mark itself, might evolve to protect not just one world, but many. Together, they walked toward the future they were creating, step by step, discovery by discovery, one shared moment at a time,